That night, like usual, I went to Walmart to buy some daily necessities. It was already dark, the parking lot lights were dim, and the surroundings felt eerily quiet. I locked my car door, grabbed my shopping bag, and headed into the store. As I entered, I felt a slight unease, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just my imagination. I grabbed a shopping cart and started wandering through the familiar aisles. First, I picked up some bread and milk from the food section. Then I went to the household goods section for some laundry detergent and toothpaste. Every time I stopped, I could hear footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw a middle-aged man. He was wearing a hat, his face hidden in the shadows. I shivered but convinced myself it was just a coincidence. As I continued shopping, I tried to focus on my shopping list, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. No matter which light turned into, the man was always behind me. When I stopped to look at items on the shelf and casually glanced back, he would also stop, pretending to look in another direction. This happened every time, as if he was deliberately avoiding direct contact with me. My unease grew, and I decided to test if he was really following me. I quickened my pace, turning into several different aisles rapidly, then hid behind a shelf to observe. Sure enough, the man soon appeared where I had just been, looking around as if searching for me. Realizing my suspicion was correct, my heart raced, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I told myself to stay calm and not to panic. I pretended nothing was wrong and continued shopping, but at a much faster pace. I decided to check out as soon as possible and leave. While waiting in line, I could still sense the man lingering nearby. The cashier smiled and asked if I needed help with bagging my items. I forced a smile and shook my head. After quickly paying, I grabbed my bags and hurried towards the parking lot. The cold night air hit me as I quickened my steps towards my car. Hearing the footsteps behind me getting closer, I almost started to run. Just as I reached my car, the man suddenly sped up and blocked my path. Do you need something?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was trembling. The man raised his head, a creepy smile spreading across his face. "You dropped something." He extended his hand, and in his palm was a key. I was momentarily stunned and checked my bag. My keys were clearly still in my pocket. I quickly shook my head. "That's not my key." He shrugged, the smile fading, replaced by a cold look. "Are you sure?" Fighting my fear, I quickly walked around him and got into my car. Locking the door, I saw him standing by the window, still staring at me with that eerie smile. I started the car and sped out of the parking lot, my heart pounding and my palms sweaty. All the way home, I kept checking my rearview mirror to ensure he wasn't following me. Once home, I double-checked all doors and windows to make sure they were locked before I could relax a little. That night, I barely slept, my mind replaying the man's face over and over. The next day, I decided to tell my friends and family about the incident. They all advised me to report it to the police, despite having no solid evidence. I went to the police station to make a report for my own safety. The officers said they would increase patrols in the area and advised me to stay vigilant. For the next few days, I avoided shopping at that Walmart, opting for other places instead. However, the feeling of being watched never left me, and I couldn't shake off the sense of unease. A few weeks later, one night while I was watching TV at home, I heard a faint knock at the door. I peered through the peephole and saw a familiar face. It was the man. He stood outside, holding a key, his eyes coldly staring at the door. Terrified, I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone with shaking hands, and called the police. As I waited for them to arrive, the fear almost consumed me. The man's knocking continued, like the whisper of a demon, pounding on my nerves. The police arrived quickly and took the man away. After an investigation, they found he had a history of stalking. My report and description helped them catch this potential threat. One ordinary weekend, the sun filtered through sparse clouds, casting a warm glow over the small town streets, adding a touch of warmth to an otherwise routine day. I decided to go to Walmart to pick up some daily necessities, anticipating a simple and relaxing shopping trip. Inside the store, people were bustling about, the shelves were stocked with a variety of items, and the familiar scent of fresh produce and cleaning supplies filled the air. I stopped in the home appliances section, trying to choose a microwave with good value among the many options. At that moment, a seemingly friendly salesperson appeared, wearing Walmart's signature uniform and a professional smile. His gaze lingered on me for a moment before he handed me a business card with his employee number and a contact number printed on it. Out of politeness, I took the card and absently put it in my pocket, not realizing how this simple act would completely change my daily life. At first, everything seemed normal, but soon after, I began receiving anonymous text messages. The content evolved from ordinary greetings to a series of late-night messages filled with excessive attention and inappropriate curiosity. Every time I checked my phone, the words on the screen felt like prying eyes, making my skin crawl. I tried to ignore the messages, hoping it was just a prank from a bored individual that would soon stop. However, things did not go as I had hoped. The salesperson's figure began to appear frequently in my life, whether in the corners of the supermarket or on my way home from work. He always seemed to find me. Each encounter came with a meaningful glance, a look that carried excessive enthusiasm and an indescribable intent, sending chills down my spine. I started to adjust my habits, trying to avoid places and times where he might appear. But this seemed to only increase his interest. One night, after working late, I was walking home under the dim streetleton and suddenly saw him standing not far away. In the darkness, I could barely make out the familiar silhouette of his uniform. In that moment, it felt like an invisible hand was gripping my throat. Panic washed over me, and I quickened my pace, almost running back home. Once inside, I locked all the doors and windows, my heart pounding for a long time before it calmed. The feeling of being stalked cast a shadow over my life. I no longer dared to go out alone. Even routine shopping trips became nerve-wracking, as I constantly felt watched. I started researching relevant legal information, looking for solutions, and confided in my friends and family. Their support provided some comfort, but the fear inside me grew uncontrollably like wild weeds. Eventually, I mustered the courage to take action. Accompanied by a trusted friend, I went to the local police station and reported everything that had happened over the past few months. The police listened to my account, recorded all the details, and promised to investigate. They also advised me to change my contact information and install a home security system to ensure my safety. Through a series of efforts, the harassment from the salesperson finally subsided, although I occasionally still felt some hidden gazes. I no longer lived in constant fear. This experience made me deeply understand that whether in the real world or virtual one, personal privacy and safety must be carefully protected. I learned to set clearer boundaries and not to easily trust strangers. I also reminded myself that when faced with threats, seeking legal assistance is the wisest choice. One ordinary weekend afternoon, I decided to go to the nearby Walmart for my regular shopping. The sunlight filtered through sparse clouds, casting a warm glow on the sidewalk and adding a touch of coziness to the routine errand. I pushed my cart through the automatic doors and was greeted by the familiar and welcoming cool air of the store, mingled with the sense of fresh produce and baked bread. My shopping list was simple and clear: fresh vegetables, fruits, milk, eggs, and some household essentials. Following my usual route, I headed first to the produce section. As I carefully selected the freshest green vegetables, a subtle yet unsettling feeling crept over me. I looked up and scanned the surroundings. Everything seemed normal. Commissars were busy with their own shopping, and employees were restocking shelves, but the sensation of being watched grew stronger. I shook my head, trying to dismiss this inexplicable unease, and continued with my shopping. Moving to the meat and frozen food section, I bent down to pick out some frozen chicken. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a figure, tall, slender stranger. He wore an oversized black coat with the brim of his hat pulled low, nearly obscuring his face. He had no shopping cart or bag, just aimlessly loitering, seemingly uninterested in the items around him. My heart began to race, while logic told me it was likely a coincidence. An ominous premonition lingered. To avoid the stranger, I quickened my pace and hurried through the busy aisles to the household goods section. Here, I immersed myself in choosing shampoo and paper towels, temporarily forgetting the earlier discomfort. However, when I looked up again, ready to move to the next section, I saw the man in black once more at the end of the aisle, maintaining the same unsettling distance. This time, I was sure it wasn't my imagination. Growing fear of being followed took hold of me. I decided to take action and stop being passive. Pushing my cart, I deliberately chose a less crowded aisle lined with seasonal items. I increased my pace, hoping to lose this mysterious follower around one of the corners. Yet, as I ventured deeper into the aisle, the store's hustle and bustle seemed to fade away, leaving only the distant murmur of the store's announcements. The sensation of being watched intensified. Just as I was about to abandon my attempt and head straight to the checkout, a sudden incident made my heart leap into my throat. A stack of cans toppled over without warning, crashing to the floor with a deafening noise and scattering everywhere. Terrified, I turned to see the man in black standing nearby, his expression eerily sinister in the dim light. In that moment, I could almost feel the cold malice in his gaze. Forcing myself to remain calm, I quickly picked up a few of the fallen items, pretending nothing had happened, and then made my way swiftly toward the exit. Each step felt precarious, as if walking on a tightrope, fearing the stranger might suddenly rush at me. Fortunately, when I finally reached the checkout area, the surrounding crowd offered a sense of invisible security. I hurried through the payment process and practically fled the store. It wasn't until I stepped into the sunlight outside that the oppressive feeling began to lift. Looking back on the incident, I couldn't determine the stranger's intentions. Perhaps it was all a misunderstanding or a bored prank, but the experience undeniably left a lasting impression on me.